What do you call it when Batman skips church?
I'm not sure.
Christian Bale.
That's all right. What is Forrest Gump's password?
I don't know.
1 Forrest 1.
What did the guy say when he discovered someone stole his copy of Microsoft Office? I will find you. You have my word.
You know, the other day I got hit in the head by a soda can. It didn't hurt that much. It was a soft drink.
I was laughing at the beginning. What musical instrument is found in the bathroom?
What?
A tuba toothpaste.
That's so dumb.
You know what type of noise a witch's broom makes?
No, what kind?
Broom, broom!
What did the three-legged dog say when he walked into the bar? I don't know. I'm looking for the man that shot my paw.
What do you call the boss at Old McDonald's farm? The CIEIO.
What did the police officer say to his belly button? You are under arrest!
Why didn't the Terminator upgrade to Windows 10?
Not sure.
Because he said, I still love Vista, baby.
A lot of Microsoft jokes. I'm a Mac guy.
Do you know what you call a pudgy psychic?
No.
A fortune teller. Fortune teller.
Yeah, I get it.
Holla back.
Yeah! What did the drummer call his twin daughters?
What?
And a 1 and a 2.
Timestamp.
Of course, Matthew Angel, in his very first Father's Day as a dad, wins the dad joke duel. It really wasn't a fair fight because Matthew's a pretty, like stone cold kind of killer student pastor. Now he's nice, don't get me wrong, but he's pretty even keel, and that was a lot of fun. Now, dads, happy Father's Day to you, especially those of you watching us online. We're so glad all of you are tuning in. Yeah, we want to say thank you to all of our dads today. Happy Father's Day to you. I do want to say, if any of you were listening to those jokes and you're like, that's good, you need to seek help immediately, all right? Those are not meant to be funny as if you should go to work and start using those this week, all right? But dads, we have jokes. We have things we think are funny, even if no one else thinks they're funny. And there's just something about being a dad. We're convinced everybody else is wrong, and we are right. I saw another example of this a year or two ago. Jimmy Fallon asked his viewers to send in some funny things that their fathers had said to them over the years. And some of the responses I thought were hysterical. One daughter wrote in and said, when my dad got his very first smartphone, he said to me, hey, honey, when does the App Store open? Somebody wrote in and said, my dad once said, it's better to belch and bear the shame than to squelch the belch and bear the pain. Somebody wrote in, said, when my husband asked my dad for permission to marry me, my dad said to him, maybe you should give it a couple of years and see if you still like her. That's pretty good. As a father of 2 daughters, that's pretty good. And then maybe my favorite, but I don't know, someone wrote in and said, my dad once told me, your mother is a nice lady, but every once in a while, Satan takes a little vacation in her body. Now, I do not endorse that statement. That's not even funny. Dads, we have the joy and the privilege of having incredible influence in the lives of our families. That brings the right to have a few bad jokes here and there. But without question, it's a day of celebration, and we're privileged to be a part of that here at Bell Shoals. And as we move to a time where we're looking at God's Word together, I just want to bring a word of encouragement, of really a study in the Scriptures that's blessed my life and really encouraged me over the years as a husband and a father, and that I'm hopeful will encourage you as well. Actually, all of you that are in the room today and watching us online, a word that I think will be an encouragement to you. You know, sometimes in the church, I've noticed over the years, it seems like we celebrate moms on Mother's Day, but then we give dads a hard time on Father's Day. You know, like Mother's Day is a day to celebrate mom, and Father's Day is a day to beat up dad and tell him how much better he should be, kind of thing. And that's not my goal today, of course. I want to share something that I think has been inspirational, that I know has been inspirational to me, and that I think will be inspirational to you, really all of you, because when we look back at the Scriptures, we see a number of incredible heroes, don't we? Like, we see some amazing men and women of faith, and there's actually a statement about one of these heroes of the faith that, again, has just been an ongoing encouragement and challenge to me in a very positive way. I want to show it to you on the screens here. It comes from Acts chapter 13 and verse 22. It's when the Apostle Paul is talking about King David. In fact, Paul's moving through like some of the history of Israel, okay? And he gets to David, and then Paul says this. It may seem like an ancillary kind of comment, but then I just want you to see, though, how profound it is. Here's what Paul says. He said, now, after removing King Saul, God raised up David as their king and testified about him. Now, check this out. This is God testifying about David. This isn't Paul. This isn't somebody else. No, this is God testifying of David. Check this out. I have found David, the son of Jesse, to be a man after my own heart who will carry out all of my will. Man, isn't that a good word? That encourages me as a husband and a father. That blesses me. And that gives me a goal. To be the kind of man, to be the kind of Christ follower, to be the kind of husband and father that said of me, here is a man following after the heart of God. That's a beautiful statement. We're in a teaching series called We Are, and today I want us to focus just for a few moments on the fact that we are faithful followers. Faithful followers. That's really something for every Christ follower today that should be true of. You know, that we're faithfully following after the Lord. And David is a man, when you look back at his life, God himself, taking inventory of all of that, said, here's a man after my own heart who will do all of my will. A faithful follower. And if you're thinking for a moment this morning about the life of David, though, you might say, wait a minute. David made some huge mistakes. Like, David made some incredible errors. He had some significant lapses of judgment. Like, wait a minute, you're telling me that King David is a man after God's own heart? That it was David whom God said, a man after my own heart? Yes, for this simple reason. Here's a great word of encouragement. When God takes inventory of our lives, he doesn't just focus on the parts, he looks at the whole. All of us make mistakes. All of us have failures. All of us have said things we regret or done things that we wish we could take back. But you know what? When we look at the whole of our lives, there should be a pattern of faithfully following. Not perfectly following. Do you understand the difference? Faithfully following. And that was true of David. No, David wasn't perfect, and David had some incredible sins and failures. But yet, as we look at the whole of his life, what do we find? A man who is faithfully following after God. That's an amazing statement. Now I want to break down briefly today why that was true. Again, this has so encouraged me over the years. I hope it's going to encourage you. Let me give you 4 quick reasons why I believe God said of David that he was a man after God's own heart. I encourage you to take these down. Put these in your smartphone. You don't have to go to the app store, all right, to do that. Just go to your notes or send yourself an email. Let me just give you 4 reasons I believe that God said these words of David. This kind of a historical approach on the life of David. All right, first of all, take note of this. David loved the Lord. Like with all of his heart, like David loved the Lord. And there are so many examples of this that I could give. Let me just give you 3 from the Psalms, all right? Psalm 5, listen to what David said here. Give ear to my words, O Lord, and consider my groaning. Give attention to the sound of my cry, my King and my God. For to you do I pray. O Lord, in the morning you hear my voice. In the morning I prepare a sacrifice for you, and then I watch. Psalm 25, he says, make me to know your ways, O Lord, and teach me your paths. Lead me in your truth and teach me, for you are the God of my salvation. For you I wait all the day long. And then finally, Psalm 42, David said, as the deer pants for flowing streams, so pants my soul for you, O God. My soul thirsts for God, for the living God. When shall I come and appear before my God? You get a glimpse here, and man, we could look at really the entirety of the Psalms that David penned. And you see, David was a man who loved the Lord. Like he just didn't classify himself as religious or moral or something. No, listen, David had a personal relationship with God that propelled his life. David loved the Lord. And that's such a great encouragement to us. As we seek to be faithful followers, all of us, it begins with a personal relationship with God through the work of Jesus Christ. And that relationship is one where we have a Father that we know, that loves us, that forgives us, that leads us, and that's a Father that we love with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength. What was true of David? He wasn't just like a great warrior. He wasn't just a great leader. No, listen, David as a person was a man who loved the Lord. What an encouragement. Secondly, David was a man who grew in faith. He loved the Lord and he grew in faith. Now listen, this is a key principle of the Christian life that all of us need to understand. Listen, God doesn't save you one day and then perfect you the next. It would be nice if he would. It doesn't work that way. I've told you this before. Let me remind you of this very profound principle that God will never work in your life so as to remove the need for faith. You're never going to arrive at a point in your life when it's like, okay, I don't have to have faith anymore. I don't have to trust God anymore. I don't have to cling to him, depend upon him. I don't have to wrestle with my own weakness, my own ineptness. No, God's never going to get you to a point in your life when you don't need faith. And that means challenges and hardships, and that means times of testing. Listen, God's developing in all of his children a greater faith to follow. And that was true of David. Listen, David didn't like just start out as some young man on fire for God, and then the next day, like he had arrived, he was this perfect figure of faith. It didn't happen that way. You know how God grew David's faith? Day by day by day, week by week by week, challenge by challenge by challenge, trial by trial by trial. Let me prove it to you. Remember when David stood before Goliath? Yes, you remember that? You say, wow, what faith for David to stand before Goliath. That's not a faith, listen to me, that happened overnight. Look at what David said to King Saul when David showed up and he's like, hey, I'll go fight this guy, and everybody else who's full grown, and trained and qualified are scared. David's like some in fact, I actually picture him as looking a lot like me when I was his age. Some like scrawny teenager, right? Skinny legs. People probably told him what they told me when I was a teenager. You look like you're riding an ostrich. You know what I mean? Like I used to run the bases in baseball, and people are like, that's just not right, Corey. Just stop running. Like this skinny little kid. Like I pictured David like he was just an average kid. But he shows up on the battlefield, and he's like, King, I'll go take this guy down. And look at what David says in 1 Samuel 17. Let no man's heart fall because of him. Your servant will go and fight with this Philistine. And Saul said to David, check this out, you're not able to go against this Philistine to fight with him. You're just a youth, and you look like you've been riding an ostrich. That's a loose translation of the Hebrew there. Check this out. He says, listen, there's no way you can do it. You're just a youth, but he's been a man of war from his youth. But David said to Saul, now don't miss this, your servant used to keep sheep for his father. And when there came a lion or a bear and took a lamb from the flock, I went after it and struck him and delivered it out of his mouth. And if he arose against me, I caught him by his beard and struck him and killed him. Your servant has struck down both lions and bears, and this uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, for he has defied the armies of the living God. And David said, well, the Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine. Now that's a man. Some of you crawl up in a heated deer stand in the middle of a Colorado winter, and you sit there with your camouflage and your bright orange, and you shoot Bambi from the comfort of your own little deer stand. Yes, I'm talking about Jason Millsaps here, all right? So, and then you go and you get it mounted and you put it on your wall and you go to work and you're like, what a man that I am. Amen. I hear that, brother. I'm a man. And I'm all for that. That's cool. But listen, you know what David was doing? He's like hanging out, tending his father's sheep. A lion would run out, grab one of them. He'd chase that lion down, tackle it, free the lamb. And then he's like, and if that lion wanted to give me a little bit of attitude, I would grab it by his beard. I'd just wail on that thing till he's dead. And then I would take his head to the taxidermist and put him up on my wall, right? And people come over and I'd show them my trophy room. I'd be like, you know how I killed that one? I went Mike Tyson on him. That's what I did, right? No heated lion stand. Well, what is David saying to Saul? Don't miss this. You know why I have the confidence to stand before this giant today? You know why I have the confidence to fight this Philistine today? Because throughout my life, God has put me in situations where he's proven his faithfulness to me. And David didn't just like say, hey, listen, God saved me yesterday and today I feel good about this. No, David's like, I've got, okay, a brief. He wasn't that old yet, but I've got a history of God proving his faithfulness to me and just how God delivered me from the bear and from the lion, he will deliver me from this Philistine. How did God grow David's faith? Day by day, week by week, challenge by challenge, trial by trial. How did Abraham get to the place where he was willing to lower the knife on his only begotten promised son? Not overnight. Day by day, week by week, trial by trial, failure by failure. God grew Abraham's faith to the place where he knew that even if he were to take the life of his firstborn son, God would raise him from the dead because God promised that son to him. And that's why Abraham, if you remember when he went to sacrifice Isaac, he told his servants, y'all stay here and we will return. You say, how did he get to that place of faith? Not overnight. Through failure, through life lessons, through circumstances that God had ordained and orchestrated to grow him. You see how David got to be a man for God's own heart? He wasn't born that way. No. David loved the Lord first and foremost. He loved the Lord with all of his heart. And the Lord grew his faith day by day, week by week, month by month, year by year. Listen to me very carefully. Let me say it again. Dads especially, listen to me. God is never going to work in your life and mine in such a way that he removes the need for faith. And it's hey, you know what? Sometimes we mess up. Sometimes we fail. Sometimes we get it wrong. Sometimes we face challenges and obstacles that we don't fully understand. What is God doing? He's working. He's building our faith. He's leading us to trust in him more. He's causing us to lean more heavily into his grace and provision. Listen, how does God work to bring us to a place where we're faithful followers? Well, he cultivates a love for him. We have to pursue that. And then we have to grow in faith and continue to trust the Lord with all that we have and all that we are. Third, write this down, check this out. What else made David a man for God's own heart? Well, he repented of sin. Man, David repented of his sin. Well, I've already mentioned, he was a failure in many respects. Man, David made some huge mistakes. Say, how could somebody be a man after God's own heart with the type of mistakes that David made? Let me tell you why. Because when David was confronted with the horror and the reality of his sin, he didn't buck up in pride. He bowed his knee in humility. And that's the mark of a true man who loves the Lord and is following after the Lord in faith. Listen, when we mess up, when we fail, when we sin, and we are confronted by maybe someone that loves us enough to say something to us, or maybe by the provocation of the Holy Spirit, we don't fight that. We don't rise up in arrogance and anger. No, we receive the conviction of the Spirit and we own our sin. That's a mark of godly maturity. Can you just imagine for a moment in our culture, in our world, how profound it would be if people would just own their sin. Don't blame anybody else. Don't make excuses. You know what? When you mess up, just own it. That's why I believe two of the most important words in the English language are I'm sorry. Some of you English teachers are like, well, technically that's 3 words. I know. I'm sorry. You know what stood out about David's life that, again, it encourages me? God said, here's a man after my own heart. He loved the Lord with all of his heart, no doubt. He grew in his faith over the entire course of his life. But then you know what? When he messed up and he was confronted, he owned it. Classic example of this is after his sin with Bathsheba. That was a horrible set of circumstances. Listen to me, all David's fault. It led to the death of Uriah. This is horrible. And Nathan, a prophet, was sent by the Lord to David at the risk of his own life. Let me show you what happened. Let me remind you what happened there, 2 Samuel 12. So the Lord sent Nathan to David, and when he arrived, he said to him, check this out, he's wise here. He doesn't just say, hey, David, you're an idiot. He says, all right, David, let me tell you about something that's going on. He paints a picture for him. He said there were 2 men in a certain city, one rich and the other poor, and the rich man had a very large flocks and herds, but the poor man had nothing except one little lamb that he had bought. Of course, he's talking about Uriah's wife here. This guy's a soldier in your army, David. He didn't have anything but his wife, his beautiful wife. That's that's his everything. And carrying on this analogy, Nathan says he raised this little lamb. She grew up with him and with his children. And from his meager food she would eat, from his cup she would drink, and his arms she would sleep. She was like a daughter to him. And now a traveler came to the rich man, but the rich man could not bring himself to take one of his own sheep or cattle to prepare for the traveler who had come to him. Instead, he took the poor man's lamb and prepared it for his guest. And David was infuriated with the man and said to Nathan, as the Lord lives, the man who did this deserves to die, because he has done this thing and shown no pity, and he must pay 4 lambs for that one lamb. And Nathan said, David, you are that man. You have everything, David. You lack for nothing. And you have taken everything from this one man, even his own life. And as you read on in the Old Testament, what do you find? David received this rebuke. I can tell you that there are many men throughout the history of the world that would not have received this rebuke. And David repented of his sin. He became broken before the Lord, and he penned one of the most beautiful psalms, Psalm 51, in response to his sin. Here's what he says in a little bit of that psalm. For I know my transgressions, and my sin is ever before me. Against you, O Lord, and you only have I sinned and done what is evil in your sight, so that you may be justified in your words and blameless in your judgment. Let me say it again. 2 of the most important words you'll ever say are, I'm sorry. I can just tell you as a husband, I've had to say those words twice in 21 years of marriage. What? I can tell you as a father, I've had to say those words. I can tell you as a pastor, I've had to say those words. And none of us are perfect. David wasn't perfect. Abraham wasn't perfect. Moses wasn't perfect. Paul wasn't perfect. Peter wasn't perfect. But you look at the course of David's life, and here is God saying of him, here's a man after my own heart. Why? He loved the Lord, he grew in faith, and then he repented of his sin. And all of us struggle at times with sin. And as the Spirit brings conviction, or maybe someone brings a word of conviction or a word of confrontation, I'm telling you, it honors the Lord when we humble ourselves and tell the Lord, Father, I repent, I have sinned, I ask for your cleansing, and we tell others that we have hurt or offended or wounded, I am sorry, will you forgive me? And that honors the Lord. I remember one time, I went to see the dentist, and I went into the lobby, and in the lobby was a huge plate of chocolate chip cookies. Do any of you have dentists who do this? And I remember, I told one of the people there, I'm like, no, I'm not falling for this. No, I floss my teeth twice a year, okay? And I just flossed before I came in for my cleaning, right? No, I'm not about to put a bunch of chocolate chips in between my teeth. No. And you know what one of the people working there said to me? She said, oh no, this is a perfect place for you to eat chocolate chip cookies. We're getting ready to clean your teeth. Like, no, actually, this is perfect. Eat all you want. That's why we've got them here. Like, you're about to have like this significant cleaning. Like, it's perfect. It's a perfect time for you to eat cookies. I got to thinking about that, and I thought that seems like the will of God. So I just dove right in, right? You know how we think sometimes about our relationship with God? We think, you know what, if I'm going to come to church today, I better clean up my life. Man, you know what, if I'm going to speak with the Lord today, I better clean myself up. You know what, we've got it backward. Now you come to the Lord to get clean. And it's okay at times you got chocolate chips wedged in between your teeth, spiritually speaking. It's, you know what, you mess up. Maybe you've got something you're wrestling with in your life that you know has got a grip on your heart. And confess it to the Lord. That's where you go to get clean. Listen, get help. Talk to someone who loves you. Talk to someone in your life group. Talk to one of your pastors. Listen. Here, my point is, what did David do? When he was confronted with the horror of his sin, he repented of it. That's a beautiful example to all of us who seek to be faithful followers. And then finally, listen, here's the thing. David followed God's will. So let's just recap here. He loved the Lord with all of his heart. He grew in his faith over the course of his life. He repented of his sin. And then he followed God's will. God's will for his life was the most important thing for David. Let me give you two just examples of this. I love these examples, okay? And I wish we could delve into all of this, but I know we don't have time. But if you just read, maybe even this week, you read through 1 Samuel 24 to 26, you'll see these two incredible examples. This is when David had been anointed king over Israel, but not yet named king. King Saul was resisting God's will. Remember this? And Saul was trying to kill David. David's gone from a place of favor to a place now he's running for his life. And there are two occasions, it seems, where like David could enact revenge against Saul. One of them, check this out, Saul goes into a cave for a little bathroom break, because I guess that's what rest stops looked like back in David and Saul's day. So he goes in a cave. David and his men are in this cave hiding from Saul. Saul walks in by himself, and so David's men are like, kill him. This is your chance. And David cuts off a piece of his robe. He's like, I'll show him, And then David experienced conviction. Check this out. Here's what he said. Afterward, David's conscience bothered him because he had cut off a corner of Saul's robe. And he said to his men, as the Lord is my witness, I would never do such a thing to my Lord, the Lord's anointed. I will never lift my hand against him since he is the Lord's anointed. And with these words, David persuaded his men, and he did not let them rise up against Saul. Another time this happened in 1 Samuel 26. Saul and his men are camping. David and his men come up on the camp. They're sleeping. They're there. They're vulnerable. David's men, again, hey man, you didn't get this right the first time. Here's another opportunity. Come to find out what an opportunity. It was a test. David passed. Why? Check this out. 1 Samuel 26. That night, David and Abishai came to his troops, and Saul was lying there asleep in the inner circle of the camp with his spear stuck in the ground by his head. And Abner and the troops were lying around him. And then Abishai said to David, today God has delivered your enemy to you. Let me thrust a spear through him into the ground just once. I won't have to strike him twice. That's my kind of security personnel right there. David, let me tell you something, man. You give me one shot at this. My spear's going through him into the ground. It's not like me playing baseball, right? I don't need multiple swings here. One time is enough. And check out what David says. Don't destroy him. For who can lift a hand against the Lord's anointed and be innocent? David's like, guys, it's not time. Yeah, running for my life, you're running for your life. We're under attack here unnecessarily, unfairly. But you know what? He's the king of Israel. And the Lord will deal with him in his time and his way. I'm not going to raise my hand against the Lord's anointed. Let me just boil this down into this simple statement. This is what I'm trying to get across to you about these events in David's life. Okay, here's what I'm saying to you. It was more important for David to be obedient to the Lord than it was for him to be the king of Israel. Now just let that sink in. It was more important for David to be obedient to the Lord than to be the king of Israel. He would have no longer had to run for his life. He would have had all the wealth in the world. But no, David is saying it's not time. Saul is still the king. The Lord has not dealt with him yet. The Lord has not given me the green light. And therefore, we will not raise our hands against the Lord's anointed. And I'm just so encouraged by this because all of us can be motivated by secondary things in this life. But there is no thing more urgent or significant than God's will for you and me. That's what's most important. And sometimes that means we make hard decisions that our coworkers don't understand. It means we don't go places where they want to go and they don't understand. It means that we repurpose our dollars in such a way that we're making investments in eternity, not just in the temporal. It means that the way that we raise our kids and the way that we live our life, man, we're aimed toward the will of God. And I look at David's life and I see myself, not in all of his triumphs, no. I see myself more in his challenges. Man, I see a man whose faith grew day by day, week by week, month by month, year by year. You know what? That's how God's grown my faith too. How about you? I see a man who made some huge mistakes, but yet found the forgiveness of God. I can relate to that. How about you? I see a man who had tough choices to make about his career, about his life, and how he would live it and who he'd live it for. And I see a man who in the midst of some challenges said, no, the will of God is the most important thing for me. Man, that's encouraging to me. How about you? And so this morning, listen, not just for dads, listen, for all of us. Hey, how about let's make a commitment to be a people who are faithfully following after the Lord. Man, that's God's call in your life. You say, but you don't know what, Corey, I've messed up pretty big. Oh, really? Bigger than David? So I don't know, man, I go through times of doubt. I go through times where I struggle with the direction of my life and I feel like I'm pulled to live for some things that are secondary, not primary. Yep, you know what? David was too. And some of his failures, he was arrogant to count his armies instead of fully relying on the Lord. I mean, listen, yeah, it's true of David. But yet it was God who said of David, here's a man after my own heart. And I believe that can be true for you and true for me.